Welcome to Thursday Talks with Chuk. Each week we cover pressing topics that matter to you and your business. I'm Arianna Gonzalez from Chuk Attorneys and CPAs, tuning in from the San Diego office. Please join me in welcoming Senior Partner and Attorney Sharmila Karingula from our Hyderabad, India office. Hi there, Sharmila, and welcome.
Hi, Arianna. Thank you very much for having me here.
Thank you so much for being here. Today, we will be talking about the US elections and the impact they have on global immigration. Just a quick disclaimer before we get started, this conversation is for informational purposes only. It does not create an attorney-client relationship. So if you have questions, please email us at info@chuk.com so we can help you out. Now, let's get right into it, Sharmila. Can you tell us how might the outcome of the 2024 US presidential election affect immigration policies and trends globally?
Yeah, so this is a very good topic at the right time. So basically, the outcome of the 2024 US presidential election could have a significant implications for immigration policies and global trends. So if the current administration is re-elected, mostly it would be a continuation or maybe a slight modifications of the existing immigration policies. So this could include maintaining or adjusting current visa regulations and border security measures and refugee admissions policies as well. So countries might continue to align their immigration policies in response to the US stance. For example, if the US maintains strict immigration controls, some countries may see an increase in e-migration as people seek opportunities elsewhere. So whereas a new administration may bring significant changes in immigration policy, I would say. So this could involve more liberal policies such as increased pathways to citizenship, more relaxed visa requirements, or a greater emphasis on humanitarian admissions. So such changes could lead to shifts in global immigration patterns. Countries with strict policy might experience changes like in their immigration rates, while countries with more open policies might attract more immigrants. So if you look at the diplomatic relations, right? So the new US immigration policy could affect diplomatic relations with other countries, particularly those that are major sources of immigrants to the US. Changes might lead to new agreements or tensions depending on how the policies align with the interest of other nations. So it might be the economic migration and social trends as well. Changes in US immigration policies, I would say, could influence global economic migration and social trends. For instance, if the US becomes more open to high-skilled immigrants, it could attract talent from around the world, potentially impacting other countries' economies and labor markets, I would say. So countries that face increased e-migration to the US might see changes in their demographics and social structures as a whole.
Wow, some really interesting things to consider there. So can you tell us what are the key immigration issues that are at stake in the upcoming US election? What do we need to know about?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll be happy to share that. So if you look at from 2015 to 2024, Ariana, so global immigration policies underwent significant changes influenced by political, economic, and social factors. So this period saw a rise in nationalism and stricter immigration controls in several Western countries. So definitely that impact will continue to be there. So the 2024 US presidential election will likely feature intense debates over border security. That is more important, the border security and legal immigration pathways that include visa programs, green cards, and citizenship. The status of the DACA and Dreamers, which is the fate of deferred action of the childhood arrivals, asylum and refugee policies, and which includes the family-based immigration, employment-based, public charge, and the economic impact of the immigration. So each candidate's position on these issues could significantly shape US immigration policy and have broader implications for the country's demographic and economic landscape. So when we say that, to touch base few examples, the favorable policy changes can help in many scenarios. So I can just go through the couple of scenarios where we can understand exactly what is going to happen. So if, for example, if we take a client named Rambabu, a software engineer from India, was in the US on an H-1B visa, and his employer filed an employment-based green card petition for him. So due to retrogression in the visa bulletin, his green card application was delayed. So recent changes to the visa bulletin allowed for faster processing in the employment-based category for certain countries, which included India as well. So Rambabu's priority date became current and soon than anticipated, allowing him to move forward with this green card application and eventually obtain permanent residence faster than he would have under the previous wait times. So even, some examples we can point out about the DACA policy change. Like after the change in policy, the administration introduced a new guidelines that provided extended protection and a pathway to permanent residence for DACA recipients. So the outcome would be that Rambabu was able to renew his DACA status and benefit from the new policy changes, which provided him with greater stability and a cleaner path to permanent residency. So similar to the asylum and refugee policies and family-based immigration too. So per se, like if Rambabu, a US citizen, filed a petition for his wife who was living abroad, the petition was approved, but there was lengthy delays in processing of immigrant visa. So as the change in rule, new regulations streamlined the consular processing for immediate relatives of US citizens, reducing the waiting period. So the outcome was Rambabu's wife received a visa and was able to join him in the US more quickly due to the new processing rules. So we can take such example for several rules that has been changed and hopefully will change in the future as well for the easy process flow. So and now about the public charge rule also, there have been some modifications. The charge rule was revised to be less restrictive, focusing more on the applicant's overall circumstances rather than just their use of public benefits. So these cases demonstrate how various changes in immigration laws and policies can have tangible impacts on individual immigration experiences and outcomes.
Absolutely, some very important things to consider there and for us to keep in mind during this process. I'm curious about our policies and how they influence other countries. So, how do the US immigration policies typically influence other countries' approaches to immigration? Do they influence them at all? What does that look like?
Yeah, definitely it would influence. It has a very significant influence on how other countries approach immigration, both directly and indirectly. So US immigration policies, as everybody knows, often have a ripple effect on global immigration trends, right? Influencing how other countries manage their own immigration issues, negotiate international agreements, and respond to migration pressures. So the US approach can impact regional policies, international relations, and also the economic conditions and global migration trends, shaping how countries around the world address immigration. So countries with restrictive US immigration policies may see increased immigration pressures as people from those countries seek to move to the US for economic, educational, or safety reasons. So conversely, like more open US policies might encourage some to stay in their home countries or move to other destinations. So there would be some regional agreements. Countries in regions like Central America, the Caribbean, or parts of Africa and Asia may adjust their own immigration policies in response to US policies. For instance, US immigration policies affecting asylum seekers can influence how neighboring countries handle migrants or refugees seeking to enter the US. So it can be like diplomatic relations, bilateral and multilateral agreements as well. The US often negotiates immigration agreements with other countries, affecting how those countries manage their own immigration policies. These agreements can include visa requirements, deportation arrangements, and cooperation and border security. So like US has agreements, for example, Mexico and Canada, they have the NAFTA agreement. So changes may happen or modifications may occur. And development policies. If you look at the US immigration policies can impact international aid and development policies. Countries that experience high levels of immigration to the US might receive development aid aimed at addressing the root causes of migration, such as poverty or violence. So the list goes on, Arianna. So the labor migration, global migration trends, and we can look at the public opinion and policy inspiration as well, and the legal and humanitarian standards. US immigration policies can influence global discussions on human rights and humanitarian standards. So international organizations and other countries may respond to US policies by advocating for or implementing measures that uphold or challenge these standards, I would say.
Such great information. I appreciate you sharing all of that with us. I'm curious about the potential changes to work visa programs that we could see based on the election results. So what are the potential changes that we could see to the visa work programs depending on the election results?
Yeah. So the outcome of the 2024 US presidential election could lead to several potential changes in work visa programs, especially when we are looking at the work visa programs. So depending on the policies of the winning candidate or administration, including expansions, reforms, increased focus on high-skilled workers, and adjustments to employer requirements and responses to economic conditions as well. So the direction of these changes will largely depend on the priorities and policy goals of the elected administration. For example, the quota might be increased. A candidate or administration focused on promoting economic growth and addressing labor shortages might propose increase the quotas for work visa, such as the very famous H-1B specialty occupations. And maybe a new program also will be initiated. There could be the introduction of new visa categories or programs aimed at specific sectors experiencing labor shortages, such as healthcare or agriculture, etc. And the process can be streamlined. Efforts might be made to simplify and expedite the application process for work visas. So this could involve reducing bureaucratic hurdles, right? And the eligibility criteria also can be adjusted or better aligned with current labor market needs. Increased emphasis on STEM, permanent residency pathways. There could be proposals to provide more pathways to permanent residency for high-skilled workers. So making it easier for them to transition from temporary work visas to green cards. So that possibility is there, like, if the path is kind of made more easier, so obviously there would be more opportunities. And employer obligations, candidates may propose changes to the requirements placed on employers sponsoring foreign workers. And incentives for employers, there might be initiatives to encourage employers to sponsor foreign workers by providing incentives or support for navigating the visa process. I would say the impact of national security and labor market considerations as well, like security checks and domestic labor market impact. Changes could also focus on ensuring that work visa programs do not adversely affect domestic workers. So this might include more rigorous assessments of whether foreign workers are filling genuine gaps in the labor market or not. Right, and also economic downturns or booms depending on economic conditions. There could be adjustment to work visa programs to either tighten or loosen access to foreign labor. And targeted visas, there may be targeted changes to work visa programs, aiming at addressing specific industry needs or regional economic development goals. This could involve creating specialized visa categories for industries critical to the administration's policies agenda. Yeah.
Wow, so we're doing, there are a lot of potential changes for the work visa program, so that's exciting, and hopefully, we get more opportunities and new visa programs that we can work with. And I know a large majority of our work is work visas, but we also do a lot of family-based immigration. So for our family-based immigration audience, how might family-based immigration be affected by different election outcomes?
Yeah, this topic is too vast, and it's not enough to have like few minutes to discuss on this, but I try to kind of cover what exactly how exactly it can be affected. So family-based immigration is a significant and often debated aspect of immigration policy. It's always been there, and potential changes in how family base can be handled is re-election of the incumbent president, continuation of the current policies. It could be a continuation of what is there right now. And the focus areas are the administration may focus or refining or enhancing existing programs rather than making broad changes, potentially addressing specific issues like processing delays or backlogs maybe. And if it is a new administration with more restrictive stance, reduction of family-based visa, a new administration that prioritizes limited immigration might propose reducing the number of family-based visas available. This could involve cutting back on the number of family-sponsored green cards or altering the preference system to limit the categories of family members eligible for sponsorships. And at the same time, tightening the requirements. There could be stricter eligibility requirements for family-based immigration so that most of the cases will be filtered and less cases will be filed, and including more rigorous proof of relationship, increased income requirements for sponsors, or more stringent background checks. That could kind of affect of less filings. And a more inclusive administration might seek to expand family-based immigration by increasing the number of visas available or eliminating certain caps. So this could involve removing limits on specific categories, such as siblings or adult children, or making it easier for families to reunite. And addressing backlogs, changes in administration could influence how the US addresses existing backlogs in family-based immigration applications. So an administration focused on reform might propose measures to expedite processing which are pending and reduce waiting times, while a more restrictive administration might not prioritize these issues. There may be like policy changes, legislative proposals, executive actions, such as the president could use executive actions to modify family-based immigration policies, such as changing visa allocation rules or issuing new guidance for family sponsorships. So impact on refugees and asylum seekers also would be changes in family-based immigration could also affect these people. That supports family reunification might prioritize about allowing family members of refugees or asylees to join them more quickly. And the interactions between family-based immigration and other immigration categories, such as refugees or temporary protected status holders, could be influenced by changes in policy emphasis.
Wow, so many great things to consider on that, and hoping that the election results only work in everybody's favor for this. So let's talk about international students. What about the implications for international students and academic exchanges based on potential policy shifts? What does that look like? What do the international students need to be on the lookout for about this?
Basically, we can consider increasing support for international students could be like expanded visa opportunities. For example, an administration supportive of international education might increase the number of the student visas like F1 and J1 available, or simplify the entire application process itself to attract more international students. That's how the economy will improve when the income increases. So that will be the one of the attraction to have the F1 and J1 students coming in. And about the work authorization for the students, policies might be introduced to or expanded to allow international students greater flexibility in work opportunities, such as extending their OPT and CPT periods or making it easier to transition to H-1B work visas after graduation, which is already there. Probably it will continue the same thing or with little or more modifications to it. And one of the other criteria would be like funding and scholarships. So increased support for funding and scholarships for international students could be a priority. And so it would be like, sometimes the stricter visa policies too for these students coming in. Could be the visa tighter regulations. A more restrictive administration might implement stricter visa requirements. It was there like a couple of years back, like, the students were not getting the visas, and all of a sudden they were like students getting like more visas than were expected. So it can be like, the graph can go up and down, but like now I think, I'm not sure, but administrator might implement stricter visa requirements, maybe, including like enhanced background checks, increased financial proof, or more rigorous documentation. So, and they may reduce duration of stay too. Policies could limit the duration of student visas or reduce the flexibility of OPT and CPT programs, impacting international students' ability to gain work experience in the US after graduation. They might increase fees and costs, and there could be impact on academic exchanges too, like, visa restrictions, tighter visa restrictions could affect academic exchanges because limiting opportunities for international researchers, scholars, and students to participate in US-based programs or collaborate with the US institutions. We have been seeing like so many students going to the other countries for these exchange programs. And if there is visa restrictions, probably most of the students will not be able to do this. And research collaborations like restrictive policies could impact international collaborations on research projects and as well as the exchange programs. Process may be streamlined sometimes if the focus is on reforming the immigration system. There could be efforts to streamline visa processes, actually, making it easier for international students and academic professionals to navigate the system. And support for STEM fields could be, and if we look at the impact on US higher education, enrollment trends, changes in immigration policy could influence international student enrollment trends in US colleges and universities. So stricter policies might lead to declines in enrollment, while more supportive policies could boost numbers. And US institutions that rely on international students for tuition revenue or that value the diversity, they might face financial and academic impacts based on policies changes. So that could be one of the thing. And global competitiveness is there attracting the of US institutions. Policies that are perceived as welcoming and supportive of international students can enhance the attractiveness of US. Yeah.
So quite a few things we need to be on the lookout for then. If you are watching this and you are looking for updates on this, we do have a blog on our website and we do post updates for immigration. So please do check that out if you're interested, and you can subscribe and we'll let you know when there's an update in immigration policies. Our website is chub.com. You can go ahead and sign up there. And I do want to talk a little bit about refugee and asylum policies as well. And how could changes in the US refugee and asylum policies impact global immigration patterns? Do we have any information on that?
Yeah, definitely. So shifts on the refugee flows, like a redirection of the refugees, we could say, as if the US tightens its refugee admission policies, refugees may be redirected to other countries. That chance is there, right? Like where the borders are closed for the refugees, so other countries will open their doors and the refugees may be redirected to the other countries with more open policies or those involved in humanitarian efforts. So this could lead to increased refugee flows to countries in Europe, Canada, or regions closer to conflict zones. And neighboring countries to conflict zones may experience increased refugee pressures if the US reduces its intake. For instance, if the US limits admissions from a specific region, neighboring countries that already host large numbers of refugees may face even greater challenges. So this could be the case with asylum seekers too. So more restrictive asylum policies in the US might lead to changes in migration routes, potentially increasing the risk of dangerous journeys and smuggling operations as people attempt to reach alternative countries. US policy changes might lead to new or revised bilateral and multilateral agreements related to refugee protection, burden sharing, and migration management, impacting how countries collaborate on these issues. So there would be humanitarian and development impact as well. Reduced US engagement in refugee resettlement could lead to changes in international humanitarian aid and development support. Countries hosting large refugee population might face increased needs and seek assistance from other nations or international organizations. There could be a policy shifts too. Countries that see increased numbers of refugees or asylum seekers due to changes in US policy might adjust their own immigration and asylum policy in response, which can lead to a cascade of policy changes globally, I would say. And economic impact would be there, and social integration changes in US asylum policies might affect how other countries approach social integration of refugees, influencing support services, community relations, and integration programs. So overall, global migration patterns could shift as people move away from regions with restrictive policies to those with more open or supportive environments. This can affect global migration statistics and the demographic makeup of different regions.
Wow, lots of things to consider there. I'm curious about the role that immigration plays in US foreign policy and how this might change after the election.
Yeah, so we could consider the diplomatic relations agreements, bilateral agreements too. So US immigration policies often shape bilateral relations with other countries. For example, agreements on visa programs or deportation policies and labor migration can influence diplomatic interactions and negotiations. So international cooperation could be with the international organizations and allies on issues such as border security, refugee resettlement, and migration management. So changes in US policies could lead to shift in these cooperative relationships, I would say. And economic and trade relations also will be affected. Immigration policies affect labor mobility, which can influence economic and trade relations. For instance, policies that affect the availability of skilled workers or temporary labor can impact trade agreements and economic partnerships. And it can affect the investments and business and refugee resettlement, like US policies on refugee resettlement impact global humanitarian efforts and development aid as well, and global leadership. The US approach to immigration, especially in terms of humanitarian policies, can reflect its leadership role in global humanitarian issues and border security, regional stability, and policy direction, global perception. We can look at the human rights in international norms as well. Like the US immigration stance can influence its alignment with international human rights, norms and conventions. Changes in policy could either align more closely or diverge from global standards, impacting US relations with human rights or organizations and other nations advocating for similar or divergent norms. So, influence on migration patterns. US immigration policies can influence global migration trends by affecting where people choose to migrate. Changes in these policies might lead to shifts in migration flows, impacting international relations and foreign policy strategies related to migration management. So there will be like a lot of effect in overall relations and the international affairs.
Wow, so lots of changes could be coming. Definitely be on the lookout for that. So one thing that has been a hot topic lately is border policies. How do US border policies affect migration trends in neighboring countries?
So, US border policies can significantly influence migration trends in neighboring countries with effects that often ripple through regional and even global migration patterns. So if you look at the increased migration pressures on neighbors, like the transit routes, stricter US border policies can lead to increased migration pressure on neighboring countries, as migrants may use these countries as transit points while attempting to reach the US. I can give you an example. If the US enforces tighter border controls, individuals from Central America may pass through Mexico. They can come through Mexico, increasing migration pressure on Mexico. And refugee and asylum seeker flow, like when the US tightens its asylum policies or limits refugee admissions, individuals from conflict zones or those fleeing persecution may seek refuge in neighboring countries, increasing the burden on these countries' asylum systems and resources. And it would affect the enhanced border control, cooperation and agreements. Increased migration pressure can lead to greater cooperation between neighboring countries and the US on border management and security. So this might include sometimes agreements on joint operations, intelligence sharing, and coordinated response to migration. And resource allocation will be affected. Social integration and redirection of migrants, stricter US border policies can lead to changes in migration routes per se. So with migrants potentially seeking alternative paths to reach their destination. So this might result in increased migration through less regulated or more dangerous routes affecting neighboring countries' border regions. Your human smuggling can be affected. Tighter US borders might drive some migrants to use smuggling networks, and policy responses. Neighboring countries may adjust their own immigration and asylum policies in response to US policies. So regional cooperation, neighboring countries might work together on shared challenges such as managing refugee camps, coordinating emergency responses, and it could increase vulnerability. Migrants and refugees who are rerouted or stranded in neighboring countries due to US policies may face increased vulnerability, including like exposure to exploitation, violence, and lack of access to essential services. So the list goes on like this. Shifts in over time, like, changes in US border policies can contribute to shifts in long-term migration patterns, influencing how and where people migrate within the region, and potentially affecting demographic and economic trends in neighboring countries. We can, like, the list goes on. We can talk forever on this.
Yeah, some very interesting information there. I do want to touch on some specific countries. What potential impacts could we see on immigration from specific regions like Latin America or Asia?
Yeah, it can be substantial and multifaceted. So for Latin America, it's like increased migration pressure. Stricter US immigration policies might lead to increased migration pressure on Latin America countries, as individuals may attempt to migrate to the US through or from these countries. This could result in higher number of migrants traveling through countries like Mexico and Central American nations. And the Latin American countries may see more asylum seekers and refugees from neighboring countries if the US tightens its asylum policies or reduces refugee admissions. So this could strain local resources and social services. So it can be the economic impact as well. The remittances, if you look at changes in the policies can impact the flow of remittances from immigrants in the US back to their home countries in Latin America. So there would be more restrictive policies might reduce the number of Latin American migrants able to send money home, affecting the economies of these countries. And to the labor migration policies affecting work visas or seasonal labor programs could impact agricultural and other sectors in Latin American countries that rely on labor migration to the US. So it's the same thing like increased migration routes or human smuggling and policy responses. There would be domestic policies, and Latin America countries might adjust their immigration and asylum policies in response to the US policies, potentially tightening their own borders, right? Like so it's like, you know, give and take rule. Like these people change and they internally change domestic policies, and there would be like public opinion, like, you know, increased migration pressures and changes in US policies might influence the public opinion and political dynamics in Latin American countries, like affecting how government address migration and related issues. It would be the same with Asia too. So there would be changes in visa policies and asylum seekers and refugees. It's the same thing. And economic impact would definitely be there, talent flow. Changes in US work visa policies, you know, definitely it will affect the skilled professionals from Asia, affecting industries in both the US and their home countries. For example, tighter visa policies might limit opportunities for tech professionals and students from countries like India or China, and educational opportunities would be affected, and shift in migration patterns and human smuggling as well. And policy responses like adjustment of policies. Asian countries might adjust their own policies and immigration visa policies in response to changes in the US policies, like for the user friendly with the way they want to be implement measures or attract to retain skilled workers. Like social and political impacts will definitely be there, and internal domestic changes would definitely be there.
So, I have two more questions for you, Sharmila. How might changes in US immigration policy affect global efforts to address climate migration?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, Arianna. So changes in US immigration policy can have significant implications for global efforts to address climate migration. So climate migration basically refers to the movement of people forced to leave their homes due to climate-related impacts, such as rising sea levels or extreme weather events and prolonged droughts. So changes in US immigration policy can significantly impact global efforts to address climate migration. So the US role in recognizing climate refugees or supporting international agreements and providing humanitarian aid can influence global standards and response to climate displacement, Arianna. So like if you look at the restrictive policies might create challenges for neighboring countries, shift migration patterns and affect international cooperation. Conversely, like progressive policies could enhance the global efforts, set positive precedents, and strengthen support system for climate affected populations. So I would say the overall impact will depend on the specific nature of the policy changes and their alignment with the broader global initiatives to address climate migration. So it could impact on refugees and asylum seekers policies, like policy framework or restrictions. And we can also see at the capacity and resources also changes in US policies regarding asylum seekers can affect the processing capacity and resources available for climate migrants. If the US increases or decreases its support and resources for asylum processing, it can impact how effectively the country addresses the needs of climate migrants and refugees. So if you look at the global leadership, like, the policy influence would be there, and funding and support would be there, and agreement participation, and like impact on neighboring countries as well. Pressures on the neighbors would be. Any changes in US immigration policies could affect migration patterns in regions heavily impacted by climate change. For example, if the US adopts more restrictive policies, neighboring countries might experience increased pressure to handle climate migrants and refugees, impacting their resources and capacity to respond. Yeah.
Wow, such great points to keep in mind, and yes, very true, it does affect neighboring countries as well. So one last question for you, Sharmila. What advice would you give to HR professionals and company leaders preparing for potential immigration policy changes? What should they know? What should they do?
This is an interesting one. Like HR professions and company leaders should proactively prepare for potential immigration policy changes by staying informed, reviewing and updating immigration strategies, and enhancing communication and training within the team, and building relationships with external experts. And I would say developing contingency plans and focusing on compliance. That is the most important thing, and fostering an inclusive work environment. So by taking these steps, organizations can better navigate the complexities of immigration policy shifts, support their workforce effectively, and maintain operational stability in a changing regulatory landscape. But always remember, take experts and professional help. Do not try to do by yourself, like it costs too much in terms of the money as well as in the timelines. So once you lose it, that is gone, the priority date is gone. So like be careful and act smart.
Absolutely wonderful insights. Thank you so much, Sharmila. Yes, if you guys do have questions and you are watching this, please reach out to us. We'd love to help you out. We are a full service legal and accounting firm, so do reach out to us anytime. Thank you so much again, Sharmila, for your time and insights on this. This does bring us to the end of our conversation. Thank you everyone for joining us today. A special thank you to Sharmila for being here with us. To stay up to date, please subscribe and follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. If you have any questions or suggestions, send us an email at info@chuk.com. Let us know what topic you want to see next, and make sure to join us back here next week for more pressing topics that truly matter to you and your business. Until next time, stay safe and take care, everyone. Thank you again. Thank you so much, Sharmila.